for me, it was this big emotional thing leaving religion. And for my son, it was just like, okay, can I have a cookie?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 4,000th inaugural Daydream Arcade podcast. I'm your host, Darryl, with my co-host, Brianna, and this week we are blessed, which is kind of ironic that I say blessed based off of some things that we're going to talk about today, but we have Hannah returning as our guest. Welcome back.
Yay, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for sitting in. It's like we didn't even get up really from the Discord call. We've just been sitting in here for a while. But I am really I was excited about the spicy Reddit stories episode with you, but I'm more excited to just sit here and talk about this. And before we get into it, everybody, I just wanted to let you guys know that this is probably going to be one of the most heaviest in terms of content.
Yeah, probably some religious trauma.
Just know that this is going to be a very emotional episode, possibly. So if you're easily triggered by any of these things, this may not be the episode for you. But I do highly encourage you to stay here and listen to what we're going to be talking about today. But to start off, where did you kind of like get your start in content creation? Like, obviously, you're Lady Deadpool. You're a body artist. You're wickedly talented.
Thank you.
Where I want to know like the deeper background side of Hannah.
I think it kind of started with church comedy. If like I'm looking at like the very, very beginning of it, because like my creative life started, and it's funny, I feel like this happens with a lot of comedians. It started as like an emotional survival tool. Because I don't know who else is going to listen to this. If you live in West Virginia and you're related to me in any capacity, fuck you. There's going to be some people that are going to try to listen to this. But I grew up I was raised by an emotionally immature adult. And like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. The house was pretty tense. Like, it's not to say we didn't have some good times, but overall, like, there was a lot of tension, a lot of arguments, a lot of anxiety. Especially yelling. I still have a thing about yelling, but I would notice something because my dad has always had like this phenomenal sense of humor. I noticed in church that I remember the exact moment actually, because we were in church. Someone my dad was talking to, these two guys he was talking to, because my dad was very social in church, they started to kind of argue about something. And like as a kid, like when you learn to become hypervigilant, you can kind of like feel the tension in the room and it like gets thicker and stuff. But then my dad cracked a joke, and instantly, as soon as my dad cracked a joke, it's like the tension was never there to begin with. And so I learned as a child, if you can make somebody laugh, you can feel safe. So I started my dad had like books that were literally, I think it was called 1,001 Jokes for Pastors to Tell. And it was supposed to be jokes for when there's lulls in sermons. And the book even said, like, we know sermons are boring. This, the average person has an attention span of this long. And I read this at like, I don't know, I was like 7 or 8, pretty young. And I read every single joke. I memorized every single joke in this fucking book, even if I didn't understand what the joke was. And I started reciting them all day, to the point that my mom told me to knock it off because I was annoying her.
She's like, enough jokes.
And it's like, yeah. And then I got into typewriters. I got really big into typewriters. I learned how to repair typewriters, and I found out I can write my own stuff. So I started at like 8 or 9, started trying to like write novels and stuff, and it's like wasn't very satisfying. And then I was like, I know, I think stuff that's funny, that's written down, like that's good stuff, and I could give that to people. So I started writing like this newsletter that only went to my parents.
Aww, that's so cute.
That's so wholesome.
It was like, and most of it was just like fart jokes and stuff, but sometimes it would get a laugh. And so I just kind of started seeking out that kind of thing, and I realized that like I could relieve a lot of anxiety through self-expression. So I started entering like random art contests. I took like an umbrella once. It was actually, you know what, that is so funny. Let me see. Actually, I think I still have something. I'm going to get it for just a sec.
I was hoping you were going to say that. That's so cool.
Okay, so this is so funny. There's all this stuff I forgot about. Okay, so what I have over here and I guess you guys will have to wait to see this chunky, beaten up, taped up, clipped up notebook. I have had this since I was 14. This is my project journal that I basically did everything with. And I also became obsessed with learning about psychology, facial expressions, body language, because I learned if I could anticipate tension by seeing how people behaved and how their voices changed, then I could figure out a way to fix that. And that was when you're raised by an emotionally immature adult, you become parentified and you learn to become hypervigilant in that if they get upset, you can figure out how to prevent it. So I'm going to see if I could try to find it, but I hand copied entire books written by like Freud. There was like a book of speeches of his that I copied down. I got really into this man called Paul Ekman. Paul Ekman and John Gottman did a lot of research into facial expression and microexpressions. So like Paul Ekman went to New Guinea. He went to somewhere that they weren't socialized with, like they didn't have like American facial expressions. They were trying to figure out, where do facial expressions come from? Are they like an inherent thing, or are they just social? And they found out that a lot of it is literally just ingrained in us, and just from our nature we can with our intuition discern somebody's feelings. And so I got all of Paul Ekman's books. For Christmas, the only thing I asked for Christmas was Paul Ekman's books on facial expression and microexpression. And I know that I have oh, you know what? Let me see if I can I still screen share this, or would that be, let me see. I'm going to try this. If you guys can see this as well. Okay, so this is the chunky book. I've had this since I was like 14, I think.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And I was trying to find, but I have like handwritten everything and
that's awesome.
And I tried to like write my own stuff. But I have the microexpression stuff down here. I conducted, when I was in high school, I created my own Rorschach test. So I got textbooks specifically, like, it's like meant for colleges, how to carry out a Rorschach test. So like the ink blots. But I found out if people have seen the ink blots before, it can affect how they'll interpret them. So I looked at what the goal was for each individual ink blot, and I recreated my own. And it's just increasing complexity. So these are all mine that I ordered ink from like eBay, and I just had these. And then I went to a school for homeschoolers. Oh yeah, and I got into handwriting analysis. I was so obsessed with trying to get ahead of people getting pissed off. I was trying to study handwriting angles.
Oh my God.
That's
got so into it. Oh damn, I think this might be some of the John Gottman stuff. But so I went to a school for homeschoolers, and I interviewed anyone that would let me talk to them. I would sit them down, and I would, oh hey, actually I have the ad that I made. I paid people $5 if they would come and talk to me.
That is so wholesome.
Wow.
Also, there's a business card for another project I did called a poetry show when I was younger. But but anybody that would let me, I would trap them in a room. I would do the ink blot test with them, because you could identify mental illness dependent on like what varies from the majority and how they interpret stuff. So that was part of what I did. And somehow like it kept, I won an art contest where I took an umbrella frame, and every section in between the wires, I would put something related to me or my interests. And I ended up winning a couple of those contests.
Wow.
But yeah, but I no, just kind of growing up though, I wrote a lot of jokes. Like I obsessed a lot over just wanting to understand people. I wanted, the goal was Sherlock. And it was funny because a couple of my friends, literally that was their nickname for me, was Sherlock, because I was like, I want to get to the point where I can just look at somebody and know how to not piss them off. I want to look at somebody and just know. But yeah, so I just ended up doing, when I found out about the Carol Burnett show and Whose Line Is It Anyway, the goal at that point was, and Tina Fey. I found about Tina Fey very young because I watched her on Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live when she did it with like Jimmy Fallon and Amy Poehler. And I was like, that's it. That's life. That's the good stuff. So like my goal for a while was, I'm going to go to the Improv in Chicago, just like Tina Fey. I'm going to blow everybody away. And, I'm going to do all that. It was either that, or I was going to go to medical school and become a medical examiner, because I wanted to be a forensic psychiatrist, because I thought I could develop like therapies to cure psychopaths or something. I had a lot of just like those kind of dreams. But, oh boy. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into creative. It was literally just learning that jokes make people calm down was like how I got into creative stuff. That's a very long-winded way of doing that, but yeah,
that's awesome though.
That was
no, that's
I've never shown anyone my notebook before too, so that
Wow.
well, we feel honored.
special as
it's
fuck.
like it's fallen apart so many times.
That's awesome.
Actually, like in here, I forgot why I took this to begin with. Oh, and I found this lady. I used to go into antique stores a lot, and this picture of this old lady, I've had her with me since I was like 13 or 14. This photo was from 1949. No idea who this woman is, but I was like, I want to be happy like her someday. So I bought this. It was $1.50 apparently, but I bought that and I've had it with me ever since. Where I'm just like, I want to be happy like her.
That's so cute.
The New Paltz area in New York, there's a lot of antique stores, and we like to go in there. There's one particular store in like the little village area where there are just boxes of photos of just random people. I don't know the story behind how the pictures got there in the first place. Not to get to that Nickelback meme, but it's kind of like there are so many stories that you can tell just by looking at a photograph, or at least think of different stories throughout that person's life or people's lives.
I was gonna say because I used to love those bins with the random photos. I would use those as short story prompts. I would get with like a crowd where people don't know they're getting their photo taken, and like I would try to figure out everyone's personality, and like I would write a whole backstory for everybody.
Oh,
and then it would almost bother me like looking at them and being like, where are you right now? And just get really attached to the person.
Yeah. And this is going to be some weird therapy moment here, but it's like, I don't know if it stems from one of the earliest photographs that I ever saw was of I was adopted from Korea when I was like 6 months old. And I was brought over to New York, and I have one of the oldest photos that my parents have of me is the day that I was like exchanged at like the airport.
Oh, how old were you?
And I was about 6 months old, so I don't remember.
You're a little guy.
I was a little guy. I
Aww.
was a little dairy. And I remember that could possibly be where my fascination with photographs comes from, and the idea of this person has a story.
Yeah.
Because I know nothing about my parents, my like birth parents to this day, and I like to not so much now as an adult, because I've kind of like moved past that kind of thinking in my life, because it's like I've reached this point where I'm probably never going to meet them. I'm probably never going to know what really happened to them, and there were a lot of times in my childhood where I wasn't necessarily as at peace with that as I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's where my interest in looking at photographs of just people just comes from. But
I think that there was probably do you think that there was like a grieving process that you had to go through with like accepting that? Because I wonder, like, I feel like as a child you would probably really be wondering, like, were your parents up front with you when you were very young and told you right away? Or I guess like
I think so. I think so. It was something, because my brother was also adopted from Korea, because my parents for a few years they tried to have kids and they couldn't. Eventually they had 2 daughters of their own. My 2 youngest sisters, and my brother, who's a year older than me, he was also adopted from Korea, but we weren't like blood related or anything. Which is kind of interesting now, because I often think maybe I may not ever have kids of my own, but I would like to maybe like adopt. And just have a complete do-over of like, and I'm gonna do it right this time, mom and dad.
Right.
But,
I relate
but
to
no,
that.
no.
Yeah.
But I think that the grieving, I don't know if it was so much grieving over it as it was kind of coming to just accept that this is what the reality of my life is, and that I was, while at times my parents were never like perfect, it could have potentially have been a life that was way better than what I would have had. So in some ways, maybe feeling a little ungrateful, or fear that I might be treated as ungrateful if I really wanted to pursue any kind of figuring out like what happened to them. And my parents wouldn't have opposed that, I don't think. But I think there is a lot of internalized guilt that I didn't do really anything to find that. Because when I got older and was on the internet, I used to get videos and like also, I mean, like I also like looked up some like ways to go about finding like adoptive parents and stuff like that. And I saw so many videos of like kids possibly like, you know, their journey and whatnot, and some of them finding out answers and having good endings or good outcomes, and some not having so many good outcomes that I maybe became fearful.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Awesome.
You don't want to fuck with what you don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes I guess I do struggle and did struggle with the idea of and yeah, I guess that answers that question.
Yeah. And because you said that you weren't like really strictly raised like religious, right? It was more like it was just like a little bit.
I was raised in an Irish Catholic family through like the division. It was Roman Catholic, and that I know that the Roman Catholic Church has a reputation for causing a lot of generational trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was not necessarily something that was forced upon me. It was the most forced was like, you got to go to church every Sunday. You know, even if we were on vacation, we'd find a church out of town to go on every Sunday. Yeah. And very rarely was I ever allowed to miss church. But I was always like, well, why does Dad only have to go to church on like holidays like Christmas and Easter? But he doesn't come with us every Sunday. He can stay home. Maybe that was like my first, like, when my doubts of the whole institution of church came from, not necessarily religion, but just the idea of having to go to this building and worship this person that you've never seen before.
Yeah, that requires many things from you consistently. Yeah.
But I was just a naturally curious kid, so as I got older, really fell into Catholicism, and I really believed I was really I lived my life the way that Jesus teaches us in those in like the Bible to do. Like I did my best to just be a good person, but also in that same vein, the restrictions that religion puts on you, I struggled with a lot because I forcefully tried to push them onto myself, even though I felt inherently like that wasn't right to do.
Right, and it's a bit I don't know, it almost creates almost like a guilt or a shame when you see if you go to church regularly and you see so many people that seem to just kind of take it in stride, and they're able to be comfortable with all of those beliefs and all of the behaviors and stuff, and really don't seem to like struggle with doing them at all. You know, going to church every single week, you get to like, you see people that seem to just embrace it and not struggle like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And throughout high school, I went to a lot of religious like summer camps and stuff like that. I went to a music camp, which I grew very, very fond of, and I made a lot of friends.
Those camps were lit. There were some really good.
Yeah. But at the same time, you have those like summer camp things where it's just like I don't I look back on it sometimes and cringe because it's like I would go to Jesus camp and I would like get a crush on a girl or something like that, and it was very much that weird like summer camp dynamic that you normally get. Maybe there's some like petty drama, or maybe there's like like I said, you got a crush on somebody and whatnot, and but you also have to make room for Jesus at the same time. So that was a very weird experience. As like a hormonal teenager and whatnot, you're expected to go to these camps, these stay away camps, and also just be like, also you got to wake up at like 5:30 in the morning for prayer.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. No, I remember I went to science camp. It was a Christian science camp, which is a little bit funny now.
Oh, that's kind of funny.
They put us like, it was like a hotel, but not quite. It was like right in the middle of the woods. I guess it was more like a motel because it wasn't like interior. You had to walk like from the outside to your room. But yeah, no, I remember needing to wake up very early, and it was cold and damp outside to go to like go up this hill to like a campfire thing, and everybody prays around it. Yeah. And everyone's grumpy, and like everyone's at least my mom went with my brother and I, and nobody was like having a good time, but it was just like we were there. It was something to do. We were homeschool kids, so it was something different. But yeah, no, I remember getting up at the butt crack to just be like, oh, thank you, Lord, for everything you've given. You're slapping mosquitoes off your kid's face. Thank you. We're so blessed.
We're so
Praise this bread.
Oh man, I remember once my dad freaked out because I didn't realize how seriously like church took like the drinking the blood and eating his flesh, like communion. I'm talking about this might sound weird if you don't know what I'm talking about, but weird about communion. And like I thought, and again, this is me trying. I embarrassed myself so many times trying to be funny, and so like they were either had like just done communion, I think they had, and they brought back to the front of the what's it called? Not the auditorium, sanctuary. In front of the sanctuary, the leftover little juice cups and little pieces of bread. I thought it would be funny if me as a child went up there and just started eating fistfuls of the bread and chugging the juice.
Oh my god.
And I did. And
that's iconic.
And then out of nowhere, I was flying. But I wasn't flying. It was my dad running out of the sanctuary after grabbing me from behind. And he's like, hey, kiddo, let's not do that. And and it was like wild because it's wild looking back to stuff like that, because instantly, as soon as I realized that he was carrying me away, I was like, I have enormously fucked up. I have like, there's nothing I can do to make up for this. That ruined like the next like 2 months for me, because especially like, if you're active in the church, if somebody does something, it's not just a one-time thing. There is no like forgive and forget. Everyone will gossip about it. Everyone will talk about it like indefinitely because they're very judgmental.
Yeah, and they'll talk about your parents too.
Yes. No, especially if your child, because the thing is with many churches, I mean all the churches that I went to, and I've been to a shit ton of them because my family actually helped start many. In California, we went in Texas, like I've been to more churches than I can possibly count. Like, a good child is a gauge for success is if the child is behaving. If the child isn't behaving, you're a bad parent and the kid needs to be punished harsher. So, like me, and I was an annoying kid, but just because I was trying so hard all the time to get people to like me, I had trouble, like, I would overthink so much what was expected of me that I would just completely, like, mess up. And it was assumed that I was called lazy. My mom called me lazy a lot, oversensitive. I was called chaos. I was literally called chaos. And once my mom yelled at me, I'm not going to let you steal my joy. And like that was crushing to me because my entire childhood was dedicated to making her happy. Like, my dad would forget, like, Mother's Day or her birthday. I would wake up before the sun. I would wake up at, like, 4 a.m. and decorate everything. I would make her breakfast in bed. And it's like that. She said that to me when I was, like, 16 or 17. And that's when I really learned what rage was. That's when I was like, you mean I could try my best 24/7 and I will always be misunderstood. There is no like, but at the same time, like I internalized that it was my fault that I was not understood, because in the church, if there's a problem, they're going to ask you, how often are you praying? When did you last read your Bible? And if there's any problems, you need to give it to God and leave it there. You don't lean on the understanding of men. You don't lean on your own understanding. You're not supposed to look at like outside sources for like worldly knowledge because you're seeking the world. You're supposed to be seeking God. So like, I was thinking like, oh, the answer was always, you're not praying hard enough. You're not having enough faith. If you have enough faith, you will be given the desires of your heart. And you can't be given the desires of your heart until the desires of your heart align with God's. And so since the desires of my heart was never, and my dad told me when I was a child, he was like, we're supposed to love God more than anything. And he said, I love God more than you. And he said, I have to. So, like, I knew that my parents, I was always secondary anyway. And then the belief was always like, if I'm not behaving well, I'm a bad kid. And then if I can't behave better, if I can't fix what's wrong with me, I don't have enough faith. And so it always led, like, it was a lot of emotional turmoil. Oh my God. And then when I found out, my mom got me this magazine that said, because, like, what's the most valuable thing if you're a young girl in the church? The most precious, important thing you have to focus on is your purity. You have your purity. That's the only thing. Like, church is fun till you hit puberty, and then it becomes really into, the kids are separated based on sex, and then the boys are told, you know, women are they're gonna have like the spirit of a Jezebel, they're gonna try to seduce you or whatever, and like you're gonna be tempted by them, and you're gonna be looking at them and lusting after them. And then the girls are told, you need to watch what you're wearing. You cannot be alone with a boy, because when boys, they can't control themselves to a degree. So like if you have tempted your brother in Christ and have caused him to stumble, that's on you as the girl. You've caused your brother in Christ to stumble. It has nothing to do with him. It's your responsibility. Wow. And I forget actually how I started that, because that was a whole other thing. I might have started like way like somewhere elsewhere. Oh yes, no, I found out there was this magazine. It was called Brio Magazine. It doesn't exist anymore. The editor I really loved, her name was Susie Schellenberger, and she used to write these daily devotionals. But anyway, there's these Christian magazines that were only sold in Christian bookstores, and one of them said, if you even think about sex, you have lost your virginity. You're filthy. You're impure in the eyes of God, because if you thought about it, it's the same as losing your purity. And at that point, I was 12 or 13, and I had literally just thought about, like, okay, how does that work? Why do people like that? Like, what's the mechanics of it? And when I read that, I literally sobbed myself to sleep, because I felt so filthy. And I was like, I've destroyed the most precious thing about me. I've destroyed it with my filthy mind. And then that led to intrusive thoughts. Because remember, you can repent. A murderer can repent, and it's the same as somebody like who, you know, says a swear word in front of a kid and then repents. It's the exact same. Sins are all the same to God, apparently. So I tried to repent, but like you can't once you lose your virginity, that's the one thing, like you can't undo that. So, but I was thinking, like, if I just keep repenting, and I can stay, like, you can still stay white as snow as long as you've, like, repented, as long as you've been made clean. So I started having intrusive thoughts every single night. I would have horrible intrusive thoughts about, like, my pastor naked or something. Like, just, like, random, like, sexual intrusive thoughts that I absolutely did not want. And I already had very high anxiety since childhood. So I would have an intrusive thought, immediately repent, another intrusive thought, immediately repent. Well, the issue was eventually I have to try to sleep, but I was convinced that I would have an intrusive thought, fall asleep before repenting, die in my sleep, and then wake up in hell. So I ended up staying awake, like sobbing, like punching myself in the stomach, pinching my skin, scratching myself, just to try to stop it. And of course, like, I did not feel I could approach anybody about this, because then they would know that I was no longer they would know I was filthy. And like, as a girl, that's like, you're supposed to be clean and pure and like perfect. You're not supposed, like, especially like I knew, like, at my age, people would be appalled that I was thinking about sex at all, which, like, now it's like, okay, 13, that sounds about right. But, you know, growing up, and like, I should say too, like, I was a Christian for 18 years, and I left Christianity officially the day after St. Patrick's Day. When was that? Because that is when my father-in-law showed his whole ass, and we were like, wait a second, he's not actually talking to God. Yeah, he screamed some really interesting stuff. That March 17th. Okay, so I've been clean from Christianity since March 18th of this year. Which is so funny, because that was right around the time that I was 1 year sober from alcoholism. Which it's amazing, because alcoholism was the best thing for keeping me in religion. Like, religion really thrives off of fear. That's the whole concept of it. Like Pascal's wager. So many people won't leave religion because they're just like, what if I'm wrong? What if I die and I find out there is a God and I'm going to go? So many people remain in religion strictly out of fear. And many of these people, like, when I've talked about, like, deconstructing online, I'll get messages and DMs from people essentially gently saying that, but essentially saying that, or trying to reach out to me being like, oh, I'm so sorry the church hurt you. And it's like, it's literally not. Just it has nothing to do with like I understand like humanity is flawed. I was never going to expect humanity to be perfect, but I was expecting the accountability I was promised. I was promised peace beyond my own understanding, at which I never came close to attaining until I left religion. But yeah, but no, it was devastating though, thinking that I was no longer a virgin at like 30, which I mean, how many like teenage boys would then just do that and just be like, yeah, no, I'm not a virgin now because I went ahead and thought about Megan Fox. But yeah,
Megan Fox.
Yeah, dude, I lost my virginity to Megan Fox. They could say that in the church.
I thought we were coming over to watch Transformers. Now I'm just confused.
Oh, we're transforming, all right, buddy. Yeah. But yeah, no.
That's the fucked up thing about the church is that they, you know, and it took me a long time to recognize it too, a very long time. Whether it was through like my own mistakes that I had made, and realizing that I can't shoulder my problems onto God. I need to fix this myself. It's not something that's just going to naturally change because I've repented, and that just means that I'm a good boy now. You know?
No, the helplessness feeling though of like, because there was because like here's something that's really common. I got married at 20 or 21. This is something that's super common. If somebody got married very young, more likely than not, they were raised religious. It's very common for people raised in religious environments to get married very young. Because, like, well, one, it almost feels like you have a sense of freedom, and two, you'll be perceived as mature by the people around you, and then three, like, sometimes, like, if you've had to kind of mature really rapidly already, and you're like, you know what, I'm an adult having, like, you know, I feel like I can't depend on anyone anyway, I might as well start having, like, life experiences, like, right now. And I remember, and knowing now that I have, like, anxious attachment, I had such a sense of urgency to, one, get out of my house. I moved out, like, as soon as I turned 18, and then I was, as soon as somebody liked me back, and like I could, because my spouse and I were friends for 3 years. We met when I was 15 I've had a really odd life. The WordPress, the blog website, used to have a random blog button that would take you to a random blog post. And one day when I was 15, I clicked it. It took me to my now spouse's blog, and that's literally how we found each other.
Wow.
But it's like, as soon as we entered a relationship, I almost became obsessive about maintaining it, even though it was an unhealthy relationship for a very long time, very scary, like because they were suicidal for like a decade, and that I felt all of that was entirely on me to prevent. So it was a big sense of helplessness where it's like I kept being told, if I just have enough faith, if I just try hard enough, God's gonna save us. And then it finally got to a point, like I hit bottom with my alcoholism, and I got to the point where like I used to have like this spark in me that always believed, if I just hang on, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But then I hit a point with my bottom, with my addiction, where I was like, there's no one's coming to save us. But I couldn't, that's the interesting thing. Like, my mom was so emotionally neglectful. I almost feel, and that's the thing, I feel almost mean using that word, because I know that she did her best with what she had available to her, with what she knew, and she was also harmed. But I was emotionally abandoned a lot growing up when I was in crisis, when I really needed help, so to me, turning to God, I did feel comfort. I thought I had a relationship with Jesus. I had a voice in my head I attributed to him. And now I know it's just like, if I meditate, like, you know, there's like quiet Bible time, and I would get to the point with like quiet time, it's like I could hear myself think again. And when I would have a rational thought and realize something, I was like, it's Jesus. Like, no, I'm just overstimulated. And I sat in the quiet for a little bit. But like, to me, like, I couldn't let go, even feeling helpless, even feeling like I couldn't do it anymore. I was just so tired. I had relapsed so many times that I was like, I thought my brain is just incompatible with sobriety. There's something so broken in me. And then like, I had been called so many things growing up. It's just like, I'm so broken. But I did feel comfort though. When I would pray and beg for help, that was comforting to me, because I was told that someone who gave a shit was listening, and if I just trusted him enough, then he would help me. Sorry.
No,
but
It's okay.
So but the thing is too is like, so when no help comes, when things don't get better, that's your fault. It's incredible. Like they have so many fail safes for keeping you in religion. They take care of all of that. And especially like if you go to different churches, you'll find it's the no true Scotsman thing. Because you could say, oh, you're saying, that Calvinism is real, that predestination. So predestination is saying he foreknew those he predestined. Predestination says before you were even born, God had already, decided if you were going to go to heaven or hell. It's predestination. Well, not everyone's Calvinist. You can go to a non-Calvinist church and be like, well, how do you respond to the Christians that are Calvinist? And they'll be like, well, they're misinterpreting scripture. You can go talk to the Calvinists and be like, they don't believe in predestination. And the Calvinists are going to tell you, well, they're misinterpreting scripture. So there's so many different flavors of Christianity, and they can all blame each other. And if you fail, if you're in pain, if something horrible is happening to you, then someone's going to tell you picked the wrong flavor, man. You're not living your life the right way. You're not keeping things rigid enough. You're not focusing on God. Like all this shit going on, you're supposed to be oozing with gratitude and worship and reaching out to God. And that was the worst thing, because I really blamed myself in the middle of all of this chaos. Blamed myself for things not getting better, because that neat little failsafe is built into the church where it's like, well, God will help you if you reach out to him, but if you're not reaching out in just the right way, then he's going to withhold to teach you a lesson, because remember, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. But so I have, and it was crazy. It was like the first, I don't know, 3 days after deconstructing. At first, there was like a euphoria during the day, because to me, like, like in the church they say like the good news, you want to hear the good news is about the gospel, and like Jesus died for you. To me, when I realized that there was no God, that was the good news to me, and I wanted to like tell everybody, because like I'm going through a phase where like I get angry driving by like church on Sunday and I see a bunch of little kids going in, and I'm like, how much of their lives are you people gonna waste before they get to find out? I get so mad at, and I have friends that are like atheists, and I apparently it's just a stage. You go through the angry atheist stage after deconstruction. But I would have kind of like this euphoria during the day where it's like, wow, this weight is off of my shoulders. I can author my own life. I can have control. And like, what's incredible and so cool to me is that life is meaningless. That's the bomb. That means you don't have to ask yourself, am I on the right path? Did I miss a turn somewhere? No, it's all meaningless and coincidence, and like it's amazing. It means you get to decide what the meaning of your own life is. That's awesome. But so much stuff was so ingrained, and I was so used to like, if anything minor that was good that happened, I would thank God for it. If I was driving and I saw a sunrise, I would thank God for it. Every little, even casually, just during the day, like I was talking to what I thought was God all day, every day, thanking and asking and whatever, and apologizing, of course, all the time. And so the first few nights deconstructing, I swear, the voice in my head that I had attributed to God was screaming at me, and it was saying like, I told you this would happen. I told you would get tricked by this is what's happening right now is right what you're gonna burn in hell. You're gonna deceive your children are gonna burn in hell. And it was horrible, and I basically had panic attacks till I fell asleep. And it's like, it's wild, because it's like, it was the same voice that in my head I had believed my entire life was loving and compassionate and knew the desires of my heart and knew who I was. And that was, I think, a big source of comfort. Like, now saying it out loud is like, I have felt misunderstood my entire life by the people that meant the most to me. And I thought this one person knew who I truly was and knew what my intention was and how hard I was trying. And now that voice, the one voice that I sought for comfort and compassion, was telling me that I have destroyed my children's souls and my soul. So it was funny, because like I've been through withdrawals and stuff. I've like detoxed from stuff enough that it's like, that was like a detox. That was like, I had to go through withdrawals. Like I went from like having a steady supply of like these behaviors for 18 years to cutting myself off. And it's like on the one hand, and I mean, honestly, similar to like alcoholism recovery, where it's like, yeah, man, during the day, there is kind of a euphoria. Like after you've got past the physical withdrawals, you're like, during the day, you're like, wow, I'm free. I can do this. And then at night, that's when the hard part starts, because like the old behaviors try to kick in again. But yeah, I had to basically go through like a religious detox from that, and it was horrible. I had vivid dreams of, violence. I would dream of violent deaths, and of course, because I wasn't a Christian anymore, the dream would end like as I died, because I was too like petrified, I guess, in my head to see what did my brain think hell would look like.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. It was crazy, and it's interesting too, like, hearing people talk about people who deconstruct and how not only is it not accurate, but it's outright lies. And it was people I used to love. John MacArthur, I want to make sure, I believe that is his name, but my family's gone to his church. It is John MacArthur. I used to love this man. I used to love John MacArthur and, oh man, the guy that was always so happy. I'm going to remember his name at some point. But there were pastors that I would literally write notes, and I loved them, and I admired them. And I took, one of them specifically had a sermon about anxiety, and I like memorized it. I loved all of their stuff. Oh, you know what? It was Desiring God, whoever that guy is. Desiring God. John Piper. Is his name also John? John Piper. I love John Piper. Well, I listened to what John Piper had to say about deconstruction. I listened to what John MacArthur had to say about deconstruction. And I'm expecting these men that have been like father figures in my life to accurately explain what I was going through. Because the thing is most people who leave religion don't actually want to leave it. I didn't want to leave religion. I didn't want to disbelieve in a God. I wanted that. I wanted to know if my dad dies or my children die, it's not the end and I am going to see them again. That's the worst thing, is to find out that how high the stakes are. And you know what? Like, that's the thing about like Pascal's Wager, where they're like, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong as a religious person? What if this is it? What if this is the only thing you've got and you're wasting it? And not only you're wasting it, you're wasting other people's lives too by encouraging them to waste theirs. And you're spending hours and days and your money memorizing these big chunks of scripture which mean nothing. And like giving money to people is just going in their pockets. And it's like, what if this is it? What if there is nothing else? That should freak you out more, I think. That would freak me out more than finding out that there's an afterlife. But listening to John MacArthur and John Piper talking about deconstruction and making it sound like, oh, we just love the sin of the world so much. Or they were never real Christians. Or like, you know, we're possessed or something. And it was just not at all remotely true. And I was like, wow, these people really don't know what they're talking about. And then I went on YouTube. Sorry, I know I'm going for a while here.
No, it's okay. No.
I went on YouTube and I was like, because I had never learned about evolution. I had prevented myself from learning about evolution. I waited until my kids were in bed, and it was like I was looking at porn or something. I like in the dark went on the computer and I went on YouTube, and I started to type the word evolution into YouTube, and I literally kept looking over my shoulder because I felt like someone, I don't know who, I felt like someone was going to come up behind me and be like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? That's dangerous. Stop that. What do you think you're... And I felt like I was about to get in trouble. And it's like, I was 29, 30 now, but I was 29, like just trying to type in. And that was terrifying. But it was also exciting because I love to learn things. I did really well in school. I was an enthusiastic student. So it was really exciting. There's like this whole chunk of science that I never even got to touch before that I got to learn. But it was so weird, where I was like, I had to stop and be like, who am I looking for? Like, what do I think is going to happen? But even considering those things would scare me. I would avoid listening to atheists talking if they were like, you know, someone talking on the radio, or even I saw like a clip of, I didn't know who he was at the time, but Matt Dillahunty, who's a very famous atheist debater. I would like see clips of him on like TV or something, and I would intentionally block it out because I could feel my faith. I could feel it being incompatible with my faith. Yeah, I could feel like the cracks there, and I had so many intrusive thoughts. I was like, I don't want to hear a full phrase, and then whatever they say is going to be looping in my head. Mm-hmm. So I literally blocked all of that out. And so it was so exciting, where it's like, I can learn whatever I want to learn. And then that's when I got into like affirmations, and that's when I found out like the source of my anxiety issues, and I started reading The Body Keeps the Score, and so much was opened up to me that like to be religious, like the correct way, like you have to shut yourself off from education. And I think if church is being like honest, they are. We were told that in West Virginia, where they're fundamentalist Christian. Oh my God. They literally say you have to be careful to not educate yourself. You can't like try to improve your intellect, because the more you learn about the world, the less likely you will be to maintain your faith. So you literally have to, on purpose, avoid becoming knowledgeable. And that's when I found out about something called cognitive inflexibility. These people end up being more likely to have dementia, because with your brain, if you don't use it, you lose it. You end up being more engaged with the emotional centers of your brain, defending your belief. That's why so many boomers are so like trigger happy. They're so angry around religion and around around social issues, because when you confront them with like a political belief or like a social issue that they don't agree with, it literally triggers their fight or flight response, because it has to. They have to protect their belief system. They have to. If they allow one little crack, it shakes them so much. It's a whole reality shift. I had to go through a grieving process, and like I was kind of like welcoming once I realized I didn't believe anymore, I was welcoming becoming more and growing. But I understand the terror, especially like these older people, where like they do have like the cognitive inflexibility, and like it is so emotionally reactive for them. And it's to the point like I almost feel bad for them if they do find out there is no God, because it's devastating, especially if you're older. I can't imagine if you don't have much time left and like you're finding out like, oh, all of this is bullshit. I don't think that they will, though. I don't think they're capable of it, especially like people like my in-laws. It's just simply not possible. They can't allow themselves to let their minds go there. But the thing is to be good at being religious, you have to intentionally keep yourself uneducated. Yep. It really sucks for those of us that are curious people and who like learning things. That really sucks.
Yeah, I think that's definitely why I eventually moved out of at least the Roman Catholicism. And the thing that really fucking sucks is like, think about a promise that a friend or a parent made. You know, it could be something very small or insignificant even, and then they don't follow through with that promise, and that feeling that you get of maybe it's just a tiny hint of betrayal, but also just like getting your hopes up. I struggled for years with this idea that I present this front that I'm actually a good person that cares about his friends, that cares about the people that he claims to love, I guess. Mm-hmm. But on the inside, I'm actually just this really horrible person who just wants to fulfill their deepest desires and say fuck everybody else.
Yeah. And
I for years struggled with that, and like without like actual mental health professional help, because I mean I was a kid at the time as well, but going into my teenage years still believing in God and the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church or just Christianity in a whole, and praying, hoping that eventually I'll just sort myself out.
Yeah.
And then coming to that realization that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
There is that just an even bigger feeling of betrayal, knowing that for years people say pray to God about it, and you'll find answers. For years just thinking that like maybe just by seeing signs in the universe and like about my daily life that's like his answer for me.
Yeah.
But then just realizing that that's just, for a lack of a better term, bullshit.
Yeah. No, and
it's something that I still struggle with to this day.
Yeah, and I feel like too, like people who were raised religious, it's easy to I mean, like look back at who we were as kids and the stuff we struggled with, and almost be mad at like who we should have gotten to be if we had gotten like mental health help, if our parents had like understood what was like going on with us before like getting diagnosed with stuff. And it's like if like all the friends like that I had like reached out to, and it has to go through this filter before anyone takes you seriously. It's like they have to check how good of a Christian you're being, how good you are at your religion before they can take you seriously at all, because it's like if you're not saying that you're being diligent, then it's just you're not, you know, working your program well enough. But I agree with the disappointed feeling, because it's like I could have been spending this time doing other things. I didn't have to be so tense about all of this. I didn't have to be so preoccupied with all of this. And I think I'm still like, because like for 18 years, I'm almost, it's over. Well, I have to look back at my life in small chunks, freak out, have a good, and that's the thing is like crying, leaving religion, it's productive crying now. I feel like it's like, I know I'm gonna get to the other side of crying and be like, okay, I've processed that. I've like absorbed, you know, the guilt I felt in the moment, the fear I felt in the moment, and I've accepted that I did the best with what I knew. But I don't know, I it almost makes me sad, like when I have to look back and think about the way that things should have been if like I had just known the truth about things, and if someone had just listened to me instead of redirecting me, who I could have been. Because like I could look back and be like, man, I was so smart and I wanted to do all these things, and like I was always drawn to entertainment. I always thought I would end up on a stage somewhere. And if I had, yeah, and like if we had gotten like, you know, man, my kid got diagnosed with ADHD at like 5, and I keep thinking like, what if I had been diagnosed that young? And the thing is when I was a teenager, I hit a point with my anxiety. I was having panic attacks until I fell asleep. I would lay down, my heart would start pounding, and then my heart would start palpitating and have like pauses sometimes. So I would keep thinking that I was listening to myself die. And it's so funny because I just now saying that realized that fear recurred when I was pregnant. I did not connect that at all until just now.
Full circle.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? But I would sit up to try to get my breathing under control, and then lay down and have another panic attack, and then sit up. And I would do that over and over again until I passed out. So when I was like 16, no, yeah, it was like 16, 17. It was the same house that my mom told me she wasn't going to let me steal her joy. I told her, like, I can't sleep. I need help. And I was like, I knew enough about psychology at that point. I had read, there's this really cool book called The Story of Psychology. Blitzed through that whole thing. And I was like, okay, I know. And I had developed an eating disorder at 12 to try to maintain a sense of control. My mom had like body image issues and firmly implanted those onto me. She put me on diets. And I mean, like, it was also like the time where like, especially like the like pop culture and stuff being like the heroin chic was like really big. It was like the stick thin girls. So, and I found out about eating disorders from a Yahoo. It was like a parenting article for Yahoo News. And it was like, these are the signs for eating disorders. And it was like, this is how they keep it secret. This is what and it ended up being a how-to guide for me. But I was like, okay, I can get a hold of myself. Because really, when you talk to people with eating disorders, it's a control thing. It's very rarely
Absolutely.
like actually like an aesthetic thing. It's about and for me, it was like my body telling me something and me saying no. Like it would give me like it was euphoric. So like I had eating disorders since I was 12. And by the time I was 16, my anxiety was still absolutely through the roof. So I told my mom, like, I can't sleep. I'm having a panic. And I think the first time that I really broke down in front of her begging for help, it wasn't the only time. None of the times worked, by the way. But I think that was the first time that I really broke down in front of her, because after that, I begged for help with my eating disorder. I was like, I was making myself purge. I was hurting myself. And I begged her for help with that. Also, nothing came of that. But I told her I couldn't sleep. And I was like, I know what we need. There's the psychiatrist. If you take me to a psychiatrist, they can diagnose me with this stuff. I think this is what's wrong with me. You know, I need help. I really need help. And it did not happen. She took me to a homeopathic doctor who smelled so bad. I think they were using the natural deodorant.
Oh no.
And she slipped this, and like we sat down in her office and she's like, okay, why are you here? And I started bawling and I was like, I'm having panic attacks until I fall asleep, all this stuff. And then she slid across the table this like yellow piece of paper, and she's like, well, fill this out for me real quick. The paper said, is it a urinary tract infection? And it was a little questionnaire.
What?
For me to fill out if I had a UTI. That was Mickey. Now, I've had UTIs before. I've never had any that made me feel like I was going to die. But I filled the thing out, and she was like, okay, yeah, it's not a UTI. And she was affiliated with, like, this vitamin store. So, like, I'm guessing she got a kickback. She gave my mom this big list of supplements to get me. We went to the store. My mom got all of them. It was outrageously expensive. I took them. Nothing happened for me, but I just kind of learned that I was on my own. And, like, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. But I didn't have faith that I would figure it out on my own because I felt like this is just who I was always doomed to be. Because my mom, the way she would talk about me when I would have problems was just kind of like it was ingrained. It was a part of me that was unchanging. So if my own mom didn't tell me that, like, you know, oh, it's not always going to be this way, or like, oh, you're feeling overwhelmed right now, like it's going to pass and I'm here for you. Like, it would have blown my mind if at any point, if my mom was like, you can tell me what's, you know, how you're really feeling. You can tell me how you feel about me and I promise I won't get mad. That would have blown me away and that would have been amazing. But no, yeah. So turns out I didn't have a UTI. I had so many supplements. She took me to someone to have my hair snipped for a hair analysis. Which it's so funny because if you have your hair analyzed by these people, they send you home with a CD. And the CD says, hey, if you try to send multiple hair samples to see if you get different results, you're gonna get different results, but that's because different parts of your hair, like getting ahead of you trying to call bullshit.
Wow.
Yes. And
that's wild.
Oh my God.
So had my hair analyzed, got prescribed more supplements, took those. I stopped taking them, I think, after a month because nothing was happening. And to this day, like, my mom will say, well, they didn't work because you stopped taking them. And it's like, but like literally a lot of my problems, it wasn't like an internal physical thing. It was like this psychological like panic that I could be talked through. Like if somebody gave me any information, I would absorb it and I would have implemented it. And she assumed that if I went to a psychiatrist, I would have gotten medication. And like, now I know that's not necessarily true. You just would have gotten a piece of paper saying what your deal is. And just knowing all of that would have been great. But I think like all of that started just because like I was thinking about like mourning like who I feel I should have been if I had gotten proper help younger. And looking back at that stuff and, like, now feeling rage towards it and needing to kind of process that, where it's just, like, it's not like I was, like, subtly crying out for help. I was I used to write my own music. I taught myself how to play piano. And I wrote songs. And I wrote a song that I showed my dad. And the song was about how, because my mom yelled a lot. She doesn't remember, of course. But she yelled a lot. And so I wrote, there was one time that literally it was freezing, raining. We were in Texas at the time. It was very cold outside and there was like ice on the concrete out back. But I went outside and I stood outside in the freezing cold rain because it felt better than being inside of the house. So I wrote a song about that where it was like being outside in the rain and being cold and shivering and alone. I felt better than being in my own house listening to my mom. And I showed it to my dad, and of course nothing happened because they probably just thought, oh, let's pray about it. And my mom used to be more, like, emotionally dysregulated. She used to be more volatile, so I feel like my dad probably just never told her about that. But I also reached out to them separately about my eating disorder, and nothing came of that either. I think my mom kind of thought the eating disorder was a good thing because it would mean I wouldn't get overweight, which that's the thing, too, is, like, you can have an eating disorder and still end up overweight. That's the wacky thing. Like, there could be someone who is, like, they could be technically obese, BMI-wise, and be anorexic because they could go through cycles of starving themselves and going rapid weight loss, being restrictive, and then they can swap in, like, binge and stuff. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but I think to her, she probably thought, like, if I came to her about eating disorder stuff, that it was kind of a plus. And it took my high school best friend she printed out a bunch of stuff. I opened up to her. She was also homeschooled. She's also now an atheist. Hi, Heather, if you're watching this. But she printed out stuff about how, like, it increases your chances of, like, stomach and throat cancer because you're causing stomach acid and stuff, and, like, you're fucking with your body. And it was her giving me that information that I was like, okay, this isn't just for now. But yeah, all that just, like, relates back to, like, man, who could we have been without, like, religious interference and, like, with actual assistance?
I'm now here at this point where I have gone through the grief of, yes, I pray to something that doesn't answer, and I kind of have to figure shit out for my own. I haven't really gotten to the point of having some sort of emotional breakdown over it, and I feel like a lot of people that have left the church have, and I find it odd that I haven't. Because I feel like I'm at this weird point with it where I know that, like I said, I can't shoulder all my problems onto God and, like, religion, and I've always felt the comfort of that. And now that I don't have it, I'm stuck with this, like, well, what the fuck do I do now? And I haven't been able to move past that. Yes,
that's actually a good point, because I feel like I completely understand how people end up in religion, because if you maybe grew up in, like, a chaotic home, and, like, if you didn't grow up with religion, I understand how people end up in it as adults, because when you look at church, when you look at, like, a belief system and what they usually want you to do, it has things that are straight up healthy for people. So you have a schedule, you have structure, you have socializing, you have people that are happy to see you, you have food, you have live music, you have that consistency, and it feels like you have home, and it feels like safety. I understand, like, how someone ends up there, because at least, like, when we're religious, if something happens, we got a checklist we get to look at. We get to be like, okay, let me look in the Word about this. Let me check Scripture. Let me give this to God. I can, ask someone to pray for me, put in a prayer request. And then when you remove that, you're, like, kind of floating all willy-nilly, like, oh, what's the first step now? And I think that's, like, where a lot of, like, overwhelm can come from, where it's like you just don't know what to do next, because, like, religion does give you a checklist. It gives you, like, oh, I know what to do at least right now. And then you get kind of, like, this background comfort of, like, someday God's going to take care of it. He's got this big plan for me, and he's going to take care of all of this.
Yeah.
And then finding out you're free floating.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, it's just like you're free floating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that the idea of him having a path for you, that he has carved out this entire, like, your entire fate. He knows, like, when you're going to die, or, like, he's just this all-knowing being. And then going through some of the shit that you go through in life, and it's just like, if this is I think every religion, for the most part, believes in the benevolence of the God, that, that it is a kind, loving, forgiving God. Yeah. And then to have that disconnect where a lot of people high up in the church, whether it's, like, a priest or just, like, a nun, or just any kind of higher up religious figure that you just look up to because you're just supposed to as a kid, and just look up to any kind of authority, and see them act in a way that's not the way that Jesus teaches you to be. The contradiction left me with more confusion, and kind of feeling like the hopelessness of, well, everything's just bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and how frustrating, because it's like, if this is someone that God's put in authority, and they're supposed to be, like, regularly speaking with him and guiding them, like, how does that happen? I remember, kind of being, like, you would hear gossip about the pastor and how he behaves himself. And it's fun. It was always called him the PK. The pastor's kids were always the worst behaved kids. Those kids were always a disaster, because their whole family was under a microscope. Their moms especially. Oh my God. Pastors' wives are under a microscope like nobody's business. They better behave themselves. They better look perfect. They better stand by their man. But no, seeing how hypocritical. And if you want to say anything about it, then it's an easy out. Again, there's so many good fail-safes for religion, where they get to just be like, well, it's humans, and we can't trust humans, and of course humans are going to mess it up. But it's like, okay, but then why did God pick that guy? You know, like there's South Lake Church.
Right.
We used to attend, I don't know if y'all have seen the South Lake Church stuff. South Lake, Texas, Gateway Church, the pastor Robert Morris, we attended this mega church. This guy would regularly take vacations with the money that we were all giving him, and they would send newsletters to our homes, color newsletters, printed, sent to everybody's homes. And once a month he would have a guilt sermon about if you're not giving until you start getting anxious about paying your bills, you're not giving enough, and that's simply why. And it was the prosperity gospel stuff. And he had a book called The Blessed Life. They had a gift shop, so after church, after you watch Pastor Morris, you get to go to the gift shop, get his book, then you get to go meet him and have it signed. They had fog and lasers, and like it was a whole production. Robert Morris, he's a pedophile. There was let me see if I could find the exact article. It just came out. This man looks like if a frog were a person, I swear. I thought that when I was a kid, but I could never say it, but I could say it now! Oh, he did resign. I heard he wasn't going to. He resigned after allegations he engaged in sexual misconduct with a 12-year-old girl in the 1980s. Yeah, no, but this guy, we watched him. We saw him every single week. His stupid froggy melty face. But there's people will defend him. Many, many, many members of his church will say, like, well, who are we to judge? You know, we're just all people. And, like, of course he was tempted. It's going to come back down to that little girl. The blame's going to fall on that little girl. Because she caused her brother in Christ to stumble. But yeah, it's like, but this guy, so many people looking up to him, listening to him, looking at him for guidance. And it's like, if there's a God, allowed his house to be built up this high, allowed this man to have boats. This man had a helicopter at one point. He had a big ass house. He got to go around the world for vacation. One time during his sermon, and this is crazy, once during his sermon, he was talking about all the things he's given away as pastor, which, by the way, things he had given away with the church's money. So all of our money we were putting in a little basket, he was giving away like cars and stuff. And he said that when he gave away a helicopter, he thought to himself that he had given more than God. And that was the only time, like, I heard the congregation turn against him for just a split second. Everyone gasped and went, oh. And then he went, oh, well, of course I know better now, but that was just my pride. That was the devil. That was the pride talking. And of course it turns it into not his fault and whatever. But it's just like, but that's the guy. Like, if there is a God, and like, why would you pick that guy knowing how it would end up? And that's also the issue with like the fall. The whole concept of the fall is like fallible people being made who can't fully comprehend the consequences of their actions, being told don't touch the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You don't touch it. But at the same time, Adam and Eve would have had to have been made predisposed to already do. God would have already known what it was going to happen, how things were going to end up. But then, of course, you ask anyone in the church, they'll say, well, it's about free will. He was giving them temptation so that they have that free will. But why was temptation necessary? If the whole point was to like have faith and to have a relationship with God, why can't we have that from the outset? Why do we have to look for signs? Why do we have to do things like go through trauma and be harmed, and people that have nothing to do with anything being attacked by evil people? Like, children are supposed to be the most precious, perfect thing in the church. We're even told, Jesus said, to try to be like the little children, and we're supposed to be like cheerful givers. We're supposed to take care of each other. So why are little children the most vulnerable to the most horrific things? And those things happen every single day when they're supposed to be the most important. And when you look at some of these people, like, I got really fascinated into, like, when I was, like, way too young. I was, like, 14, 15. And I thought I was going to be a forensic psychiatrist because I was like, I want to work with criminals. I want to understand them. I went to the library. Oh, man, the things I rented from the library. One of them was just transcripts of interrogations from, like, serial killers. And I inhaled all of it. But what struck me was that a lot of these guys straight up didn't have a chance to be anything than what they became. When you look at some of the horrific abuse that they endured as children and the environments that they were in, and like the substances they were exposed to, they didn't have a chance. So where is their free will when they had their legs cut out from under them from their childhood? They had no chance. And that was always what I was grappling with, is like, if I tried to address that, the church will just tell you, it's a shame, But that's what happens when all of humanity has free will. Like, you can't blame God for that. But it's like, if God is omnipresent, if he's omnipotent, then, like, if I were in the room when a child was being abused, am I not responsible? Do I not also have a hand if I were capable of intervening and I decided not to? We're supposed to believe that God is omnipresent. We're supposed to believe he's in every single room and he hears everything and he knows the desires of all of our hearts. So God should know when a predator enters a room with someone who's vulnerable, what's about to happen, and does he intervene? No, but we're also supposed to believe that he leads godly people together so they can get married and have babies, and we're supposed to celebrate that God brings people together. So it's like, is God just like really active with some like happy things, but for like the stuff that's a bummer, like child abuse, he just decides to not bother himself with? But that's the kind of thing too, like I would start to think about growing up as I was reading these things, but you have to suppress a lot with religion. If you want to stay in religion, it's a lot of suppressing things like that. Because at the end of the day, you can just tell yourself, his ways are higher than our ways, his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And that was my default.
His will be done.
His will be done, yeah. And be still and know that I am God. Like and I was told us trying to comprehend God is like an ant trying to comprehend an elephant. It can't be done. So it was like, I mean, unless we're like really underestimating ants, which I mean, I don't know. I've seen Bugs Life; they might be capable of more. Yeah. That documentary.
How strong ants are? You
yeah,
ever
they're
seen an ant try and lift
strong.
a pie? Like,
if a bunch of ants ganged up on an elephant, they could probably take that dude down.
Oh, absolutely.
At least 100%. A baby elephant.
Yeah.
Full-grown elephant.
But then it'd just be sad. But yeah, but yeah, noticing things like that, and like the hypocrisy, and but not allowing myself to think about it until now. And it's been scary. It's been scary when I have to literally I have to schedule time to have breakdowns. I have to schedule time to process this stuff, because if I sit down and like I always feel shame. I always feel unlovable. So, but it's like buzzing. It's like background noise because it's such a part of my inner life. It's always been a part of my inner life. But when I decide to sit down and try to like I'm quiet with myself. And I just go ahead and ask that feeling. I'm like, I'm not fighting you anymore. Where is this coming from? And if I just focus on it and I try to figure out, okay, something today reminded me of this thing that happened when I was a kid, that I felt out of control, that I felt I should have been able to prevent and I couldn't. And I have to set aside like evenings to lose it, to like bawl and like listen to affirmations that it's like inner child healing stuff. The best shroom trip I ever went on. No, there are a couple of good ones, but like during my deconstruction journey, because I always thought like if I could go back to my childhood self, I would just give her a really, really big hug and just not let go first and say, I'm not mad at you. I'm not going to be mad at you. And I'm listening to you now. And during this shroom trip, we were like I started to have, like, when I close my eyes and my imagination goes bonkers and it's like I have visions, like spiritual visions. But we were like on a grassy, like, cliff thing, and I saw my child self and I just picked her up and I hugged her for like an hour. And like when I came out of that, like the next day, I felt this weight off of my shoulders because that's all I needed. And like how much, like, I'm very physical. I love being like my hands being touched or whatever. Like if I'm falling asleep, my foot has to be touching my person. I don't care like if it's like their shoulder or hand or whatever. Like I have to be in physical contact with like people I love. It's like it's the most like grounding thing for me. So being able to hug myself, like I went through so much of like the inner child healing stuff, and I was so scared of like not being a spiritual being anymore. Like the whole idea of like, because if you believe in God, you believe that you are also an eternal being. You believe after you die here, like you've kind of always existed to God because he knew you before you were knit in your mother's womb. And then you're supposed to exist forever and ever and ever afterwards. So we're eternal beings. So going from that to finding out I'm purely like organic. I am electricity piloting a meat machine and hoping that it's a really long time before I get cancer. Because that's really like the barrier to aging for a long time, is eventually we all just get cancer. But I had this other like vision where I literally saw like, it sounds crazy, I saw like different landscapes throughout like the planet's history. Like I was seeing like deserts and like a rainforest sprouting up and all this stuff. And I heard a voice and it said, look at me, I am nature, I know how to take care of myself. Now look at you, your nature, you know how to take care of yourself. And like that was like the closure for me. I stopped hearing the Jesus voice yelling at me after that. Like it's like that was the thing that allowed me to, like, that's right, a lot of this is out of my control. But if there's no right way to live life, then I do have some control. And I do intuitively, we all do, like, intuitively know how to take care of ourselves. Way back to Paul Ekman talking about facial expressions. We know how to make facial expressions. Even if you're blind, you make the right facial expressions, even if you've never seen them before. And we know intuitively how to interpret those expressions. Even if we don't immediately know what they mean, we can figure it out based off of our intuition. So like we're nature and we know how to take care of ourselves on some base level. But yeah, anyway, do drugs, kids, I think is the lesson.
Do drugs.
Yeah.
If I could convince myself not to be a Christian again, but if I could like convince myself of there like being a God, because I loved the concept of the spiritual realm. That was one of my favorite things to learn about. Like I loved this idea that like there's this whole other world, and like it is comforting. It's like there's always something to hang on to. There is an unchanging being who knows you to your core, who loves you and like wants you. And it wants to be willing to guide you. Like, it is so much. That's the thing that's crazy to me is like, with a lot of these people talking about deconstruction, who are still religious, they'll make it sound like, oh, well, they just love their sin, and it's too, the way to heaven is narrow, and few are the people that make it to the gates. Like they make it sound like the easy way is not being religious. The easy thing is staying religious. By far, 1,000%, it is the easiest way to say, we know exactly why people are like this. We know exactly what's going to happen after we die. We know if something terrible happens that, like, they tell you to, like, not seek out justice from people because God will take care of it for you. Like, you're like, there's someone in my corner. There's someone who knows me when I feel misunderstood. It's the easy. You could go to like any city in this country and instantly have friends. If it's Sunday morning or Wednesday night, you can, in any city in this country, you can find a church and there will be people happy to see you and give you a seat, give you some food, play you some music, and swap numbers. You instantly have a family. It is the easiest possible thing to stay in religion. What's incredibly hard is feeling like you need to start from scratch, because if all of this is nonsense, if you've been misinformed your entire life, you now have to reparent yourself. You have to re-educate yourself. You have to reevaluate your relationships and figure out who are you going to tell and how are you going to tell them and how is it going to hurt them or scare them. Like, it's terrifying. Like, if you have people who love you and they're in the church, they think that now you're doomed. You're going to be in eternal suffering. And that's not something, like, there's a lot of people, they just don't tell their friends and family that they've left. We live, I use my parents for childcare quite a bit. So I feel comfortable talking to my dad about most things. So I told them that I'm deconstructing, and like, of course, my mom didn't initially take it well, but I told her like, well, some people deconstruct, and I'm not sure how, but some people deconstruct and remain in the religion, but it's just, I want to know that, like, I did my research. So I started fact-checking Wall of Jericho. I started fact-checking Noah's Ark. I started fact-checking Ark of the Covenant. I tried to see if there was any evidence that Jesus even existed at all. So, like, all these things that I was told growing up, we have evidence. There's pictures of the Ark of the Covenant. They found ruins from Wall of Jericho, and it's like all this stuff that I was told that there was proof for. I tried to fact-check it, and what I kept finding was that there would either be no proof, or if there was proof, it was faked by a Christian group. There was this group that I remember as a kid seeing on a VHS a picture of the Ark of the Covenant, which was like, it was this big, like a gold chest thing with like angels with their wings draped forward and their wings meet in the middle, and it was carried with like these wooden sticks, but you weren't like, people weren't allowed to touch it, and if you touched it you would die. And there's like this one story in the Bible where this one guy, they're carrying the ark and it was gonna fall, so this guy just touches it to prevent it from falling. That dude fucking died. So, but I remember this picture, in this cave when I was a kid. Like, it was on a VHS, and they're like, they found the Ark of the Covenant, but they're saying that they can't bring it out because God told them the world isn't ready yet. So then, deconstructing, I'm like, ooh, let me look into that. That thing was a prop. They faked that whole thing. They faked the evidence. They claimed they found Noah's Ark. That was literally a Christian group that funded this expedition, and they made a set. They made a Noah's Ark set for the boat. So it's just everything. And I started to watch The Line. The Line is really great. They have a YouTube channel. It's atheists who encourage theists to call in. And there were people on there, this guy Forrest Valkai, and there's this girl Gutsit Gibbon that are like, they know so much about science and so much about evolution. It was so cool getting to listen to them and like hearing theist callers call in and ask questions that I always wanted to ask, but I couldn't, and getting to hear answers. It was amazing. But it's just, the thing is like, I started deconstruction with the hope that I would find God again. That's the thing, and I think that's most people that deconstruct, is it's like, I don't want to let all of this go because it's terrifying. And like, I genuinely thought I had a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That was a relationship I had to grieve. Like, I didn't want to leave that behind. Yeah. But no, Christians, if you hear them talk about like leaving the church, they want to say that it's the easy way. It's the easy way to leave it because we love sinning. Are you having so much fun sinning all the time? Isn't it just a gas? I don't feel like I'm living
love
my
sin.
Love the adrenaline rush.
Yeah. Yummy sin. Yeah.
But I think it's also naturally ingrained in us as humans to be like, oh, no, like, that's bad. And then you just get that instinctual curiosity.
Yeah.
And then it's just, you just sin. It's within our nature to sin. Just make sure you go to church every Sunday and repent.
Yeah, that's the thing. You could do anything. And if you repent, it's like hunky-dory. That's crazy.
Yeah. That's wild.
It's like
to
also
me.
giving men the ability to cheat or sleep around on their wives or hit their wives, abuse their wives. But it's okay because God says that, a marriage is a sacred institution, and God forbid if the woman leaves or if you get divorced, what they're going to look like in the eyes of not only the church community, but in God's eyes as well.
Oh, yes.
I always thought it was very unfair.
Yeah, no, there was this, when we were in West Virginia and we were attending my spouse's family's church, a woman who, I forget how many kids she had. It was like 3 or 4 kids, but her husband was abusive. She finally, and I felt so sad because like when I was engaged, she and I were fixing up the house that I was going to move into after getting married. And I remember she was talking about like, oh, you're getting one of the last good ones, and and all this stuff. And she started reminiscing about her own life and her husband. Her husband was abusive, and she at one point she stopped. We were like scrubbing the walls. It was an old house, and she stopped and she like looked at me and she was like, "It's too late for me, isn't it?" She's like, "I couldn't find anyone else. Do you think?" And I didn't know what to say to her because I was 20. And so I knew from like, and that's the thing, people, it's funny, everyone thinks you're stupid if you're a woman over there, but I had been listening to like everyone, I had been eavesdropping like a motherfucker. I knew everything that was going on. So I was afraid of getting in trouble if she told someone that I encouraged her to leave her husband. But I just said like, that it's never too late and that there's always so many options to do. Like I kept it nice and vague. But I think she was like in her mid 40s at that point. She finally, like after we had left West Virginia, I found out she did leave her husband. But the churches wouldn't accept her until she took him back. So they are back together now.
Wow.
And I remember overhearing a story from her where he started screaming at her and he was going to hit her. And so she got scared. She grabbed the home phone and he knocked her to the floor and pinned her to the floor, and the kids were screaming and stuff, and she was just trying to call 911 to get help. Like, and that's a mild thing for this guy to, and he was cheating on her left and right. She found stains on a bunch of stuff. It's funny, people would talk about this stuff around me, but they thought I was stupid because I was a young woman, but I heard everything. And it's funny because my mother-in-law at one point was like, I don't know if you know this, about such and such, but she's in an abusive situation, and I didn't want her to feel stupid. Yeah, well, I didn't want her to feel stupid, so I played stupid, and I was like, oh, no, But no, like literally that though, like it's because like she was the wife and mother, and he was very well liked. He was a very social guy, very outgoing. So yeah, but no, they're back together, and like the last time, I've unfriended everybody from there on Facebook, but the last time I saw her on Facebook, she did like a sappy like anniversary post, just like, oh, this godly man, everything I asked for and whatever. But they've been together since they were teenagers, and he had like a very strong influence on her since then. And
wow.
But yeah, no, divorce is a big no-no. And I remember when I got engaged, the main thing my dad like hammered into me was, you cannot get divorced. Like, when you get married, you have to make sure like this is it, because you cannot get divorced. And yeah, and also because like my dad had been divorced before he met my mom, and I think part of it was he wanted to spare me the pain of going through one, because he had a very, very difficult one. But like in the church, basically though, like you are making a promise to God, like both of you are making a promise to God to stay together. So no matter what happens, you're just supposed to stay together.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish, like, we've worked out a lot of stuff now, but I will say, like, they got mentally ill enough. I should have left many times. And I didn't, because, well, one, I was petrified because I felt so incapable. I felt so helpless and incapable just from what everyone had told me about myself. But I also really believed. I believed if I just loved hard enough, because I felt like an ocean of love inside of me. And I was like, if I can just pour it out enough, then I can fix it. If I just believe hard enough and love hard enough, one day I will wake up and this will all work out like it's been promised to work out. And we didn't see any progress. Like, we were very, very close to breaking up. I was very, very close to finally just saying that's it. And the thing that saved our marriage was leaving religion. That was hands down, because I was getting ready. I was done. I was tired. We've been together since I was 18 years old, 12 years. Never had a relationship before that. And, but yeah, no, but it's funny because like the thing that saved it was absolutely leaving the church and being able to like look at what the real problems were and that there were real solutions for it. Finding out that, my emotions deserved to be addressed and that they were valid, and it wasn't just me being oversensitive little neurotic woman. Like, I had a reason to be afraid, especially my in-laws' behavior shortly before we left West Virginia. I had every right to be afraid. That's the funny thing. I was right about everything and everybody. I could smell all of that. I knew what their deals were, but I suppressed all of that. And then after leaving religion, after all these people are finally harassing us and saying all these things about us, I was like, I knew it. And that's like my one regret is it's like, I had a couple of ideas. One, I wanted to I have this old, I think they're fake pearls, but it was a fake pearl necklace I wanted to send to my brother-in-law and my father-in-law. And I wanted to put a note and say, here's some extra pearls for you guys if you get tired of grasping your own. And I wanted to send somebody like some gummy wieners because they would have just been so appalled by them, or some shit. I really wanted to send some shit. But it's just like these people who had screamed at me, who had belittled me, who had lied about me and gone behind my back, and who had plotted against me, genuinely. Like, it was odd. Like, the amount of coordination these people took to manipulate us and to make me know that I was powerless. Wow. And it was terrible. It was awful. And it was odd. But I'm glad to be gone with it. But like, religion would have been the end of it, because I had hit a line where I was like, I can't survive like this anymore. I was terrified. Like, my kid, he's 8 now, and I was thinking like, he's going to think this is what life should look like. He's gonna think that this is what like a marriage should look like. He's gonna think that this is what the template is. And literally, like, after I left religion, and it was so funny because my kid is so fucking smart. He's like literally like borderline prodigy. We had him like assessed and stuff. This kid's wicked smart. He loved evolution, and I didn't realize, because we had discouraged him from learning about evolution, of course, because we were scared. And I was like, well, you can learn about evolution now. And he's like, oh, I've been, when I was letting him watch like YouTube Kids stuff, he was going and secretly learning about evolution because he loved it so much.
That's awesome.
Wow.
But
what a smart kid.
Oh, I know. He's really amazing. But and also I did what my parents never did. And I literally told him, like, we've messed up. And I said, like, Dad and I didn't know better, and we were doing the best with the information we had, but like I used to be more poorly emotionally regulated. I used to carry out some behaviors that like my mom did. And even like being aware of it and feeling helpless to stop it, I was like stuck in this cycle where it's like I want to be the steady one. I want to be the calm one. So we started implementing these tools where because I was still working on like getting my reactivity down. So I literally told him, like, if you're worried about me getting upset about something, we came up with this thing called Mommy Promise, where like if he's scared that something's gonna like upset me, he would walk up and shake my hand and be like, can you mommy promise to not get upset about something?
Aww.
And that would give me the heads up to take a big breath and be like, yes, okay, I promise. And it would always end up just being something mild, but it's just like just knowing, like, building that trust with him, because I could also see him, like, you know, squinching in on himself and like trying to become more emotionally independent. He wanted to be independent and not rely on me. And I could also see him kind of being parentified, because he could see that I could be like, I could freak out over things. I would catastrophize a lot. I was a very, very, very fearful person. And he had to like this kid at like 5 years old, I would have like meltdowns in the kitchen, like be fetal position in the kitchen, just losing my mind. And he would walk up and put a hand on me and sorry. But he would put a hand on me and be like, are you okay? Can I get you anything? It's like he's a fucking child who was like put in that position. And I had so much shame around that. Like I've never like talked about that part of it before. But it's like I didn't want to be that person. I wanted more than anything to be the strong, like calm, productive, like to be the parent he deserved. So like when we left religion, started getting my head on straight, I literally told him, I have not been the mom you deserved. I'm learning how to do it now. But you need to know, anytime I got upset, it had nothing to do with you. This has nothing to do with you. We all have big feelings, and it's my responsibility to deal with them. It's not your responsibility to calm me down. It's not your responsibility to take care of me. And he's still really compassionate. If I get upset, he'll still be like he won't come across the room anymore, thank goodness. Like he doesn't feel that obligation anymore. But he'll still be like, you doing okay? Or how's it going? Like he'll check in on me still. And it almost makes me sad, because I would do kind of the same thing with my mom. Like I wouldn't outright ask her, but I would go into her sphere. I would go into her space and try to feel out what she needed from me. And then I would try to take care of it. So it's like, but I feel like, you know, he's only 8 and I got him set up with a therapist, and it's like, I feel like I'm trying to undo some of the damage that I've like done. And it's like, at least, because my mom never said, I was wrong. I know that I've scared you and I've hurt you and I did wrong by you, but I'm going to try to do better. She never did that. So I can I at least have some comfort where I get to be like, we were wrong. We shouldn't have been Christians. We shouldn't have taught you this stuff. Because there were times too, he would freak out and have anxiety, and I would do what my mom did. And I would say, well, pray to Jesus about it. He's always listening. And for me, I did get comfort from that. But I think because I was more emotionally available to my son, I've always been like very emotionally available to him if he's having like a meltdown. He didn't feel the comfort from praying that I did, because he had me for comfort. And I remember being confused about that. I remember being confused why he was like, I prayed and I didn't do anything. I didn't feel anything. I don't really want to. Because to me, like I remember as a kid being like praying to God all the time and really feeling a warmth. I remember feeling a warm sensation, like a hug. But I think it's just because I didn't get that warmth from my caretakers. Like, I didn't get that warm feeling from who I needed it from. I had to get it artificially. But yeah, how old were you, do you think, when you, like, kind of left religion? I feel like for a lot of us, like, there isn't, like, a firm age. It was just kind of, like, a gradual, like...
It was definitely in my early 20s. And I think I may have checked out around the time I left high school, to be quite honest. I think for the last few years, I was kind of just pretending...
Yeah.
things just got so bad in my personal life that I eventually, that voice, like I like how you said that you had like a voice that you attributed to Jesus.
Yeah.
I had like a voice that was like attributed to God, and eventually I just stopped hearing that. But I always felt like God always was paying attention to me, because that's what you're always taught from a young age. God's always listening. Jesus is always there for you.
Yeah, sometimes as a threat too, where it's like, you know, if you've got any secrets, they're all going to be that was something else, is the if you have any secrets, that they're going to be revealed someday. So I felt I couldn't keep secrets. I was terrified if I tried to keep a secret. I was terrified of how it would come out, because everyone said it would. And then I think that's the coolest thing. Like, after leaving religion, I was like, wow, I don't have any secrets. And I almost like wanted to like make one, do something weird and just not tell anybody, just so that like I could have something that was just mine, because nothing's going to happen to me.
Right.
But yeah,
once you have that realization
listening.
That, you know, you did something weird or you did something wrong, and oh my God, I'm not dead.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Oh, that was something that sorry, is there I didn't want to interrupt your thought. I feel like
No, it's okay. No, go ahead.
But there was this thing that Matt Dillahunty, the atheist from the line that I mentioned, he mentioned, I think it was called the Blasphemy Challenge, but it was basically like people recovering from religion go ahead and like swear at God like every single day for like a week or something, and go ahead and see that nothing happens. And I had to do that, and it was terrifying, because I was really scared. Because the thing is sometimes I would pray, and then like coincidentally something bad would happen after I had prayed. So there was a big part of me that was really scared that if I started like doing that something would happen. I just started doing it. And after like the third day, then it's like, oh, I'm flipping off the ceiling and like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
It was like, that was one of the most healing things, was like calling the bluff. Because like that was what, like, we were told, like, especially like, you know, you don't use his name in vain. You don't use his name to swear. Like, you have to be very, even our wedding vows, we were forced to edit our wedding vows, because at one point, because my spouse had, when they wrote some of their parts, something like, you know, in the name of God or whatever, we had to remove that, because it was invoking God's name to say something that wasn't directly spoken, like in the Bible or something. And they're very, very, very cautious about language. So that was like the most outrageous thing I had ever done, was like swearing at God every day for a week. Like, it was the bomb. It was very scary. But then it's like, once you've taken a risk at something that your body, like my body was trained to think that this was like a physical danger thing, and then finding out nothing happened, it was a big burden off. I had so much on my mind all the time, 24/7, that was just alleviated as soon as I removed that. Yeah. There's no one there. And being alone in my head, that blew my mind. That I'm the only one in my head? That's crazy. I had never felt alone in my own mind before. And it's so
scary.
Weird. Like, yes, no, it's funny. Like, as I'm talking, it's so funny. I haven't said like any of this stuff to anybody. So it's like weird, because I'm connecting things now. Because I've noticed since moving back to Oklahoma, it's been, I think since May, it's been a few months, I have a lot of I feel very lonely a lot of the time. Even when I'm around other people, I have this very persistent feeling of loneliness. And I'm only just now connecting, saying all that out loud. This is like therapy. That like, no, I think part of it is that just like, I was shocked when I had that realization that I am alone in my mind, when I had felt someone was with me this whole time. But I feel persistently lonely. I feel lonely right now. Like, I feel lonely all the time, and so I'm just kind of like I've been trying to do little things to like help my mental health, but that's one of those persistent things. Next month I'll finally get to go to a therapist for the first time in my entire life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck with that.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's
also, I think it's funny because after my insurance, the payment is $69, which I think is great. It was just like, yeah, when like setting up like the payment portal thing online and just being like, huh, nice. Like every month, that's just $69 coming out.
That's awesome.
But yeah. I'm so hyped for therapy because there's so much that I can't believe the stuff that I've managed to deal with on my own. I can't believe I managed to get sober on my own. Because that was insane. And everyone wanted to like attribute it to God, and I allowed them to. But it's like looking back, like I relapsed many times, and I called out for God many times, and there was, radio silence. But I took that as a personal failure, of course, because I had approached improperly or something. I remember Joyce Meyer. Anybody who like listened to like, when was it? Would have been like, I don't know, early 2000s, like Christian TV when they did like the 500 Club. Joyce Meyer, who's like kind of like a female pastor, but I don't think they called her that because women aren't supposed to teach women in the church. Men can teach women. Women can teach women. Women can't teach men.
Wild.
Yeah, but Joyce. Oh yeah, and we would avoid a church if we found out that there was a female pastor. That was a big no-no. But Joyce Meyer talked about this concept of reseating, and she said reseating is if you do enough stuff for God, you get a spiritual receipt, and then at some point you get to cash in for stuff that you want. If you've done enough for God, you get stuff, and she called it reseating. But Robert Morris with Gateway Church in Southlake preached a similar thing, where it was like you need to give until you're kind of nervous. Until you're nervous you're giving too much. But also you're supposed to be a cheerful giver, by the way. Because God loves a cheerful giver. So you're smiling and weeping, like putting stuff with them in a little basket thing.
Damn, it's just contradiction over contradiction on contradiction in everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really scary that you don't realize that until you're... Or also just refuse to believe it when people... Bestie, you and I would not have been friends years ago, but... it's wild, the contradictions, but also it's scary to see the people that truly don't care.
Yeah.
Or are just blind to it.
Yeah.
And I don't want this podcast episode to come off as we 100%, or at least on my end, 100% hate religion. I'm very angry of the way that it treated me, the way that I treated other people because of it, because of my beliefs. I think that at its core, religion can teach you how to be a very good person.
Yeah, but and that's
in my experience, there was just there was too much bad.
Yeah. Well, and like I know, like we mentioned before, like Jesus' teachings. If you just chop out just look at what Jesus said in the Bible, there's some really good stuff in there, about like loving your neighbor, and about like not accumulate, like giving your wealth, and like how it talks about like a wealthy man parting from his riches is harder than fitting a camel through the eye of a needle. Like there is some good stuff in there. Oh, and let he who has not sinned cast the first stone. Like, guys, don't be judgmental. Like there was some good stuff in there. It's just it's just a lot of the how it makes us treat each other. I'm sure there is like a right way to do religion. I think right now I'm going through my angry atheist phase. The thing is like I would love to believe in an afterlife. I would love to believe in a God. If there's like any evidence for it, anything that can be like demonstrated or proven, then I would love that. I'm not like anti-God or even like anti-religion. It's just the Christianity. I'm anti-Christianity. There's no proof for it, and we read this book as if it's proof for things, and so much of it's written with multiple authors. The Bible's actually been edited several times. There have been stuff left out. There's multiple translations of it, and everyone can interpret these different translations in different ways, and it's just really easily weaponized, and it's weaponized every single day. But no, I love spirituality though. I do love, I still love that idea. I loved the idea. The spiritual realm was like my favorite thing. I loved this idea of this other world of like powers we don't fully understand. I love the idea of like manifesting. I love that idea. I don't like believe in the power of crystals, but I will say it zens me out though to like hold crystals and listen to someone do like the Reiki like meditation shit. Like I love that stuff. But But yeah, but definitely like no I guess no hate for anyone who like means well from like religion. It's just very it's difficult.
Do you believe in astrology at all?
I don't know. I have many friends who do. I haven't seen anything to like scientifically back it up, but I also know like there's new stuff coming out about like dark matter. How like there is like invisible forces we don't quite understand that we can't even like immediately like demonstrate, but we know that things are there based off of how they interact with other forces, and it's like interesting stuff. I'm not against it. I love listening to people talk about it even. Like I find all of that really interesting.
Yeah.
I like learning about it even if I don't end up like implementing it. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily believe in the pearly gates that St. Peter is going to be there to greet me and let me into eternal happiness. When you look at science and you look at like for me, space is a big thing. I know space terrifies a lot of people, but when I see these things coming out about how they've discovered like new galaxies that are just like thousands of light years away from our own galaxy, and it's just like we are really just on this rock, this one tiny rock, and it gives me this comfort of knowing that while I may not believe in God necessarily, I think that we are part of something a lot bigger than ourselves, and that gives me comfort. But I know that also terrifies a lot of people as well.
Yeah. No, that reminds something that I found really comforting was someone saying that humanity is the universe trying to understand itself. And it's like, geez, like, yeah, like we came, like everything like comes from the earth, and we are like when we die we kind of go back home, like eventually like all of us, it's just going to go back to space dust. And I was like, it was kind of like a song, I was kind of writing a song like about that, where it's just like what's going to happen when like there's nothing but that, when like there's nothing but ruin, when like humanity doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, no, the grand scale of it definitely can freak me out sometimes about like how insignificant we all are. But then how easy it is to get wrapped up in minor things at the same time. It's really odd.
That kind of thinking gets me back into kind of like why I want to be an entertainer.
Yeah.
Is because we're so vastly insignificant. It's like if I can leave a mark on the world or anybody's life in any kind of significant way, then I feel like I am doing something good.
Yeah.
And that is what I get a giant reward out of doing.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, where it's like it's almost like not quite the goal, but like the desire at that point is to somehow do something that outlives you in a positive way. Because it's like no matter what, like all of us are like not going to exist at some point, but if we can somehow like leave a ripple effect, that if we do something for someone else and they're capable of doing something for someone else, that maybe something can outlive us. Like we still leave some fingerprints behind.
Yeah. And I don't think, and you look around the world today and you see all this terrible shit happening, and it is undeniably just, it's terrible. But that's the way, sadly, I feel like humanity has always been, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, you can't do something to make a difference.
Because, I mean, I'm so grateful to exist, like, with our generation. I'm so glad we live with our generation, because the people before us didn't know, like, what we know about how to better ourselves or to be more compassionate, better people for the people around us. And, like, there's primal, like, survival type stuff where it's like we want to lash out at people, and if we feel threatened, it's like almost like we want to get physical or something. But like because of the information we have now, and because of other people that have gotten better and they educated themselves, and now we have literature for that, and we get to educate ourselves and we get their ripple effects, then like we get to become better people. And it's been like a healing thing for me, like seeing like the transformation that's even like just occurred in my son since like I've started. I mean, I've been getting sane. I really wasn't living before. I was in fight or flight basically 24/7 for the past 10 years. So me, I've never been present before. I've never been present until now. So getting to see my kid, like, him being more emotionally vulnerable with me and like being more open with me and like seeking me for like advice or like just to get like a hug, or him just feeling like I'm accessible to him emotionally is healing for me, because I get to see like it stops with me. It stops with my generation, that even though like my great grandma hurt my grandma, hurt my mom, hurt me, it ends with our generation. If you know, like if you ever like adopt and have kids, you won't have to press upon them like religion, and they won't have to go through anything that you went through, because you'll be better informed. Yeah. It
does terrify me if they end up coming home and being like, mommy, dad, I heard about this Jesus fella.
Yeah. And I will say, like, you have to educate your kids about religion, because someone else will. So, like, I've talked to my son, like, he knows quite a bit about religions, because, like, right now, because, like, his ADHD and he has oppositional defiant, I had to pull him out of public school, because without his diagnosis, they couldn't make accommodations for him. So I was being called every single day, because he was just, like, losing control. And finding out now he probably has autism, it makes a lot of sense, because he was having autistic meltdowns, and it makes sense because I was having autistic meltdowns. And, oh man, I lost my train of thought already just thinking about that. Oh man, I was gonna see if I could get it back real quick. It might come around again. I don't know.
I know, that's okay.
But yeah, but no. But no religion. So like, since he doesn't have, we had to cut. He basically lost half of his family. We had to cut off that side of the family entirely. So he has like no social life. He has no friends, except for like we'll go to the library or do community stuff. But the only consistent friends he has right now is I let my parents take him to church every Sunday. Because again, before puberty, church is a blast. It's snacks, it's friends, it's dancing, it's like there's a gymnasium over there. And so, he knows very clear, like he knows very well about church. And we've even told him like, okay, if someone tries to argue with you about this, like just don't, because it's very important to them and you can just respect their beliefs and without being unkind about it. But no, like I feel like as long as you just like give them a heads up about it, where it's just like, hey, by the way, there's these people that think this thing, like kids adapt pretty well to that stuff.
Right.
They're pretty great. They're pretty great about not being radicalized. Unless they just straight up didn't know better. Although it's kind of funny because my kid kind of knew better before I knew better. But I heard that it's like part of like the autism and like the ADHD thing too, where it's like it's kind of harder for people like that to remain in religion because of how you process information and how like you don't just like accept things. But yeah, but he was always resistant to the religious stuff, and it was in a way that was confusing to me because I remember as a child being so open to it. But he's always kind of been like too wise for it, and just kind of nodding his head to like, oh, okay, mom, yeah, okay.
Big man in the sky, whatever you say.
Yeah, basically, or like he liked like some Bible stories are pretty crazy, so he liked some of those, but. It was just funny that because for me it was this big emotional thing leaving religion, and for my son it was just like, okay, can I have a cookie? Can we have mac and cheese for dinner? Like, so I'm so glad that like he won't have to go through everything that I did. Like really, our generation is like so lucky. It just is. Like we get like the fact that like I have most of my friends. Well, for a while there, 100% of my friends were online. And especially during COVID, like complete isolation except for the internet.
But man, there were a lot of questions that I actually didn't even get to, but unfortunately we have ran out of time. I think.
I have to make my kids dinner as Deadpool.
Yeah. Like I had like questions for like content creation and stuff, but no, we went deep. we went deep into faith, and I'm really glad that we had this talk, because not only did I feel like I also got some clarity on some things that I also secretly struggle with, but like I guess that validation of knowing that I'm not alone in that, and I haven't really had that kind of connection or realization in a long time. And
I definitely appreciate talking to you. I think like I kind of needed this because there's not really someone that like I am able to like talk to about this stuff at length, and it's so raw still because it's like not only am I'm navigating a new life, but I have to look back at my old life with brand new eyes, and could be very painful because I don't like myself I don't like myself when I was poorly emotionally regulated. I don't like myself, like, when I would have a panic attack if someone knocked on the front door and I didn't know who it was because I thought it was going to be bad news. Like, it hurts me a lot to look back at who I was in the past, and I'm so glad I took so many photos of my children when things were bad. Every good memory, every little good memory, I would try to give us like a lot of little good things. And even like, I might cry talking about this, but it's like, when I was poorly emotionally regulated, and I would have panic attacks every single day right in front of my kid. And he would have a hard time like going to bed, like bedtime was awful. But when he would fall asleep, he would finally fall asleep, I would watch him sleep, and I noticed, because he was a really deep sleeper once he was asleep, I noticed if I said words that were like things that he liked, I could see his face, like he would twitch like a dog running in his sleep. So I could see him getting excited. So like, I don't think I've ever said this publicly either. No, I haven't. But so if we had a bad day, I would apologize to him when he was asleep. And then I would make up a whole story to give him good dreams. So I would be like, if I'm a shitty mom, at least I can give him good dreams. And I know sometimes it worked because sometimes he would talk about it the next day. But he was like 3 and 4, I think, when I did that. But like I'm able to look at myself in those moments, and it helps alleviate the shame from there, because in my head it's almost like I want to look at myself as a villain this whole time. But like, I wouldn't, like, as soon as my kid had ADHD symptoms, I got him help, and it was like, I know that no matter what, I have always been trying. So I can say whatever shit I want about myself. I know that I have always been trying. But anyway, this has been really interesting. I think this has been, I realized I've made some connections that had not been made before, for sure. Like why my persistent feeling of loneliness all the time. I didn't connect that's because I for 18 years thought I had someone else in my head. So that was like wild, having that little epiphany. But yeah, no, this is really interesting. I hope that this is helpful to someone. I find that like people who are really involved in religion, leaving it, we have a lot of similar emotional experiences, but just you don't hear them talked about very often unless you're in like deconstruction circles.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel like
body
everything.
keeps the
some
score,
people
and adult children of emotionally immature parents. Both of those are big recommendations for anybody like leaving religion.
I really wanted to let you have a space to we Jesus Christ, sorry, it's getting later.
I felt kind of bad because I noticed that like it's mostly been like the two of us, and I'm like, oh man, I hope I'm not like being rude, but
not at all.
Yeah.
No, like I mean I had explained to Brianna, like I know that like you don't have like a lot of experience in this, but I also didn't want her to feel like she couldn't chime in.
Yeah.
At the same time. Brianna, do you have any questions about anything?
No, I think you guys like kind of went through everything, really. It was just kind of like, I guess, as someone that didn't have at all the same experiences like with religion as you guys did, but I definitely had similar experiences in a different way, I guess, because like all of the emotions you guys are feeling, like I felt it, but it was never in a place like, I don't know how to explain it. It didn't stem from religion. It was always an internal battle with myself, I guess. So
right,
it's
so
like
the shame and the self-blame.
Yeah,
and the ruminating.
absolutely. And I think a part of that, because I don't want to compare this at all, because I guess my experience with like, you know, coming to terms with my sexuality, I always like felt that I was different in my family, because I never had like, I guess like
did nobody ever sit you down and talk to you about the normalization of having a a non-traditional sexual attraction to the opposite
Yeah,
sex.
like I never
Or
had
the same sex.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. I never had someone to look up to that like had that experience, and like, you know, I was always felt shame because like my family was religious, but it wasn't to like the extreme that, you know, like you guys had to deal with. But I knew that they had like traditional values, and like they wanted me to be like a traditional wife, and you know, find a nice man, start a family, all that fun stuff. And I was sitting there being like 13 years old, like, damn, that's not what I want. Let me tell you.
Wow. Like when you're a kid and they're talking about that stuff right in front of you. I didn't realize I was bi until I was 27, I think. And it was so funny because like it's like once you do realize, it's like, oh, this was right in my face.
No, literally, like
this
it's
whole time.
Wild. Like I remember being in 5th grade and being like, I only want to wear polos because that's how I feel. That's how I feel good. But
I remember,
like,
it was just a completely different, like, I guess, experience, but also very similar with just like the internal struggle with just trying to come to terms with everything and just like
with reality.
Yeah.
This has been such a great talk. I'm glad that, you know, I mean, I kind of just I felt like it would be appropriate to kind of just let you take the reins, and you know, any guest that we ever have moving like forward, and like I've always wanted to have them on to kind of tell their story. You know, we talk about so much stupid shit on this show that it's nice to have someone else come on and talk about their lives and have like an even more in-depth conversation than we normally do, where it's just talking about just terrible people on the internet and making poop and butt jokes.
Yep.
Right. No, this was really cool, and you guys are so easy to talk to as well, which I think helps a lot. You have very welcoming like energy.
Oh.
But yeah, no, it's very like a very relaxed, and it's I don't know, I felt comfortable like being vulnerable with you guys, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, literally, thank you so much for like feeling that you can be comfortable and like say everything that you need to say, because I guarantee that like everything that you said, there's so many people who like don't know how to vocalize it, or like are scared to say anything, but completely agree with you.
And also wild that this is like our first time, like actually over the years that we've known each other, even on Mixer, like we never streamed together ever. We never even gotten a voice call together, which is wild. But like, hey,
just kind of like in and out of each other's communities and stuff, and a lot of mutuals. That was the cool thing about Mixer, is like everyone kind of had, if people weren't directly friends with someone, there's always a ton of mutual friends in between.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys for listening, watching to this, wherever you are. I hope that this was a very stimulating conversation for you guys, because it was for us. So thank you all for watching. Hannah, you are free to go cook
I forgot I've been
dinner
Deadpool
for your
this whole
kids
time.
as Lady Deadpool, and
we will free you.
Also, and you're also obviously welcome back on the show whenever you want. So.
Yeah, no, I gotta go make dinner. But yeah, you guys have a great night.